Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at a virtual open house. My name is Andrew Dalton, and I'm the Executive Director of the Adams County Historical Society here in Gettysburg. I'm here with my good friend and our historian, Tim Smith, who you probably know well by now. Well, I think you have your sound up on your phone, so you better... Also, just want a public service announcement. Do not click any of the links in this post. We see we've got some hackers or something on our post, which happens every time we have a successful video. So I guess it's already successful enough that they're coming after us. So anyway, thank you for joining us here at the Historical Society building. We are on Seminary Ridge in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And tonight we're going to take you through the building, show you a little bit more about what we do. We'll go through the various rooms and talk about this facility, our current operations, and how we're going to adapt and grow into a new facility that you may have heard about that we'll be building starting in just a couple months. So, Tim, do you want to set things up?
You know, currently we are at the Wharf House, and the Wharf House is named so because a president of the seminary built the house, and here's an image right here, Edmund Wharf. The building is from the 1880s, and we've adapted it to our home and our archives and research center and offices here at the Historical Society. But as we walk around, you might notice that it is kind of a Victorian house with a lot of interesting architecture, and it's not, I don't think it's the best suited place for a historical society, but it is an interesting and kind of a cool building.
It is, yeah, and the Historical Society, as you may know, we've been around since 1888 in one form or another. This is actually last year, was our 80th year of being incorporated. In 1940, we became an official legal nonprofit organization in Pennsylvania. So we've been around for a long time. In that time, we've collected over 1 million historic items, photographs, diaries, letters, documents, artifacts, and so much more that you'll be able to see some of tonight. We're going to take you through a room that we have set up kind of as a little exhibit or museum, and we'll show you some of our favorite artifacts from the Historical Society's collection. So I hope you'll join us and come in here. I want to give a shout out to Maria Lynn, our collections manager, who's behind the camera tonight. And if you do have any questions, please let us know. Just comment the questions, and Maria will be able to shout those out to us as we progress here tonight. So how about Maria? Well, why don't you come over here and we'll show you some of the artifacts here that we have sitting out. So on this first table, and some of you may remember some of these artifacts from videos we've done in the past, but we want to talk about them in a little more detail, a couple of our favorites. And actually, I'm going to start with this map. So you might want to zoom in a little bit here. This is one of our favorite pieces in the collection. It is the original map on animal hide of the town of Gettysburg, created in 1786. Prior to the lots being sold off and Gettysburg becoming the county seat, which it would become in 1800. Gettysburg, you can see the street names, York Street, you can see Baltimore Street. You can see some of the street names are not like they are today. York Street, for instance, stretched all the way across both sides of the square. We have West York Street and East York Street. Today, West York Street is Chambersburg Street. So this is an incredible map. It's the first map ever drawn of Gettysburg. And I'm going to point out one other item from early Gettysburg history that we think is really fantastic. This is the original survey for the town of Gettysburg. Samuel Geddes established a tavern here in the 1760s. His son James Geddes would inherit that tavern and then lay out the town. And this is the original survey for Gettysburg from 1785. And you can see the original intersection of the two roads that would eventually become the town square of Gettysburg. You want to add anything, Tim? What are some of your favorite artifacts?
Well, another early Gettysburg item is the fire bucket of Christian Culp. We actually have two original fire buckets in our collection. But early on, and off the top of my head, I think it's like 1806, they decide that there's an ordinance passed that every citizen in the town will be issued a fire bucket. I shouldn't say citizen, every family in town. And it has their name on it. And when there was an alarm, every citizen was expected to bring their fire bucket filled with water to the fire. And then they would, of course, form a line to attempt to put out the fire. Early on, when there was no mechanism to stop these, configurations that started, I can't even say configurations, fire buckets were very important.
Right. Yeah, another couple items that we really enjoy. This is a sheriff's ledger for the town of Gettysburg, and it dates to about 1800. And the first sheriff of Gettysburg was James Geddes himself. And this is a ledger that actually came from the Geddes family. A descendant about 3 or 4 years ago unearthed this ledger in his attic in Tennessee and sent it to us. And we still receive donations like this, about 100 each year. And some of them are more exciting than others to us, especially something like that of such significance to early Gettysburg. But I should point out, in the early town, the courthouse was in the center of the square. A lot of people don't know that. It was there from 1800, I believe, Tim, all the way through to 1859 when it was torn down and the new courthouse was built on Baltimore Street. At this courthouse, we actually have the original door in storage that we're going to be putting in our new museum. And through that door, Francis Scott Key walked as a young attorney. Thaddeus Stevens walked through that door as an early attorney as well. Thaddeus Stevens, of course, the famous abolitionist who began his legal career here in Gettysburg. And we have several items from Thaddeus Stevens' law office on Chambersburg Street. This is a book. You can see it's actually signed by Thaddeus Stevens, and it was a part of his library. And we also have some furniture from that library. We have portraits of Stevens, and we have some other belongings of his, like the gavel that he used when he was president of our local school board. Tim, do you want to talk about the Francis Scott Key item there?
Well, we have a manumission paper where Francis Scott Key of the District of Columbia is the owner of a certain man of color called Clem Johnson. And he actually brought Clem Johnson to Gettysburg and manumitted him. In other words, he freed him here. And in the document, it says something interesting, like that he is now allowed to, to go wherever he would like to. And it's from 1831. So we have a little connection to Francis Scott Key, of course, the man who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. Jumping ahead a little bit to the battle, I think one of my favorite things in our collection is this note. And this note, we believe, it came to us through the Culp family, and we believe this was a note that was left in the farmhouse of George Culp. And he lived just west of the town, and in Cumberland Township. And basically it says, Mr. Culp, your house tore up pretty bad, but we will do it a good deal more next summer if you do not quit burning up our houses and turning our women and children out of doors. When this you see, remember the 9th Regiment of Alabama Volunteers. And of course that's Catamus Wilcox's brigade. So that's just a fabulous document that was preserved by this family all those years.
Right. What else, Tim, do we have from the local civilians during the battle? I know, for those of you who've heard our programs before, we like to talk about how we have hundreds of accounts of the Battle of Gettysburg left by citizens of the town and county residents detailing their horrendous experiences during the battle and afterwards when the town and the community was so devastated. Now, what is this letter? What makes this one of the most significant articles?
I would say that we have some 300 accounts by civilians or about civilians relating to their experiences during the battle or after the battle when they served as nurses in the hospitals around the town. So we have a nice collection of civilian accounts that actually are back there along the wall in those boxes. But most of our accounts are collected accounts that we got from other places. But this is a letter that was written by John Rupp on July 19th, 1863, almost 3 weeks after the battle. He's writing to his sister in Baltimore, and in great detail he describes the action at the edge of the town on July 2nd and 3rd. His house happens to be caught between the two lines of fire, and at one point he mentions that the Southern Army is on the back side of his house and the Northern Army is on the front porch, and they're firing at each other through the doors and windows. He also in this letter mentions the death of Mary Virginia Wade, who was killed about 100 yards from the house that he lived in.
Wow, that's amazing. And then, of course, after the Battle of Gettysburg, we have quite a few artifacts that illustrate how Gettysburg became the tourist mecca that it is today. Obviously, millions of people visit here every year, and we have some items that really portray what that was like. But I think the first example of mass tourism to Gettysburg was perhaps on November 18th and 19th, 1863, when Abraham Lincoln visited Gettysburg. And you're looking here at an original program that was handed out at the Gettysburg Address ceremonies, the dedication of the Soldiers' National Cemetery on November 19th. This is an original page. A lot of people wonder, what is all the writing on it? And just like today, you might attend a program or an event and you scribble all over the program, not thinking that it's significant. And that's exactly what happened to this. You can see a local citizen just scratched away at it and did some mathematical calculations. But it is an original program, probably one of only a few that still exist that we have here in the collection. And I like telling this story. Some of you may have heard it before, but when I was a volunteer here in high school, I was told to go around and find unlabeled boxes and then figure out what was in them and put a label on them, which was a lot of fun. We found all kinds of amazing things, but that was by far the most exciting item I've unearthed here, I think, at the Historical Society in my years here, finding that, and then I think I brought it to Tim and others and was shocked that everybody was even more excited than I was about it. So it's amazing to be able to find things like that. When we have over 1 million items, discoveries are still being made. So actually just a few weeks ago, Tim and I unearthed something I think would be interesting to talk about. Now why don't we shift to some more Civil War related artifacts for a moment here. Tim, you want to talk about, I know others have known about this, but this is one of the items actually in the process of putting together our new museum. We unearthed this out of our archives. It's been used a couple times before, but we found some really interesting facts about it.
I think this is a letter that was written to Sally Myers Stewart. So a lot of people know that Sally Myers was a school teacher at the time of the battle. She acted as a nurse after the battle, and she helped care for one particular soldier who died at her house on West High Street. And eventually, she ended up marrying his brother from Western Pennsylvania. They had a son named Henry Stewart, and Henry Stewart became one of the early on, one of the archivists or researchers here at the Adams County Historical Society. And he donated his mother's collection of material to the society while he was, basically he had my job here. Now, this letter is from a soldier in Virginia in 1864 to Sally Myers Stewart. And he's basically relating the news of what's going on to her. He met her in Gettysburg while he was stationed here. I think he's in 149th Pennsylvania, in the Bucktail Brigade. And on the back of the letter, he attached some signatures. Now, you mentioned it had been used in a book written about Sally Myers, but in the book, they just show the letter. They don't tell you who the signatures are. And quite honestly, it took us some time to figure out exactly who all signed it. But this guy worked as a courier for the First Army Corps here and then the Fifth Army Corps. And he actually delivered messages back and forth to people, and he cropped signatures out of their messages. And the signatures are attached to a letter for Sally Myers. And on it is the signature of G.K. Warren, John Sedgwick, the commander of the Sixth Army Corps that dies in the Overland Campaign. And this letter actually mentions that he had just been killed. George Gordon Meade is on here. I forget, where did we say Meade's signature is there? Oh, George Gordon Meade signature.
And Hancock.
Hancock, where's Winfield? Yeah. Winfield Scott Hancock's signature. And then there's David Russell's signature, who's killed in 1864. And who else is on here? Sheridan. Philip Sheridan's signature is on here somewhere also. Right. So it's just a fabulous document of signatures. I think if people would long ago have realized whose signatures are on this letter, maybe it wouldn't be part of our collection. But you know,
well, we think there is clearly, it looks like one signature missing, and so Tim and I have been very interested in whether or not, you know, it was the Lincoln or Grant perhaps on there that was taken off and maybe sold or given away. Well, we have a whole table here of other artifacts. First, I just wanted to say, I can see a lot of folks donating. We really appreciate that. You know, every little bit helps. We are building a new facility, and we need your help to do it. You know, we're relying on hundreds, perhaps thousands of individual supporters to make this happen. And we're going to tell you more about that building as we progress through the Wharf House tonight. But every little bit helps us. So thank you for donating, and I hope you'll hit that donate button at the bottom if you're enjoying our program. So this table here, we want to show you some more really amazing Gettysburg artifacts. Now this is a very Civil War heavy table. Perhaps the most exciting, or I think my favorite item, at least on this table, is the sign in the very center. You may have seen this in some of our videos. This is William T. King's Tailor shop sign. It hung in the square of Gettysburg during the battle, and you can see the damage that was done to it, perhaps during the Union retreat through town when bullets were flying through the streets. William T. King was a Union soldier. He was a veteran of the Civil War, lived many years afterwards. We have his collection here at the Historical Society in addition to the sign. And we also have some items from the Gettysburg battlefield that were picked up afterwards. This is a sampling of artillery shells. Of course, these are artillery shells that are just beautifully preserved with the original wood bases still attached. And I like our collection of relics because, you know, unlike what you might see in other places where it's metal detected items, we have the original items that were picked up within days and weeks and months after the battle. This is a sampling of that. We also have a very famous artillery shell. I think it's probably one of the only ones where we know exactly where this shell came from because we have a photograph of it. This is a solid shot, a 12-pound, I think, right, Tim? 12-pound solid shot. And you can see it lodged, this very same cannonball, lodged in the cherry tree at the Sherfy farm on the Emmitsburg Road. That's an original William Tipton photo from the 1880s. Tim can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's a beautiful artifact, and I think maybe I stole Tim's favorite. That was one of Tim's favorites on the table here. Tim, anything at the end of the table that you want to point out?
Oh, we do have, of course, you know, our scarf. So the story is with this is that on June 30th, 1863, the night before the battle, one of General John Buford's cavalrymen stopped at the Washington House on Carlisle Street at the current location of the Lincoln Diner. And he gave this scarf to Emma Yount, whose father ran a hotel at that site, the Washington House. And of course, he went into battle the next day. He never returned. She never again connected with him. And she always wondered, she wrote an article about it, whether he survived the battle or not. But this is actually given to her by a Union soldier prior to the fighting. And the family actually donated to this to the Historical Society in the 1990s, I believe.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Now, we are hoping in the new facility that our museum will have a really nice display, not only with items from the Battle of Gettysburg, but also with items relating to Adams County in the Civil War, because some 3,000 men from Adams County served in the war. One of the interesting things we have in our collection is a canteen from a member of the 138th Pennsylvania Infantry. I think his name is William Hake. Let's see, on the tag, he's in Company B, and there's a bullet hole in the canteen. Now, we're not exactly sure what battle it occurred in, but it was definitely in 1864. And I think in the account that's left with the canteen that he's wounded when the bullet goes to the canteen. We also have a roster of the men in Company B, 138 Pennsylvania Volunteers. And we have some portraits of soldiers, and this is a pastel, I guess, of a soldier who was in the 165th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. So throughout our museum, we're going to have a really nice collection of local items dealing with the Civil War, like many other historical societies do, besides the fact that we have a lot pertaining to the battle.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, another story I wanted to highlight, of course, the aftermath of the battle was so horrendous. We're going to tell a lot of stories in this new museum about what that was like for the citizens, the disease that was rampant in the community, bodies buried in just about every field and backyard. You had wounded soldiers in just about every house. And so it was really traumatic for the local citizens. We have a couple items that display, that sense of how traumatic this was and what a desperate occasion. One thing is we have the diaries of a local woman who ended up becoming a nurse after the battle, Sally Myers. She was 21 years old. She was a school teacher. Never imagined her town becoming such a famous and perhaps infamous at the time place. But she recorded all her memories in diaries, and we have these here. And it's amazing to read about the day-to-day activities in Gettysburg, what life was like after this terrible event. And then we have some notebooks from a local doctor who actually treated some of the wounded. Dr. J.W.C. O'Neill was a Southern sympathizer, born in Virginia, came to Gettysburg shortly before the battle. And actually, in addition to treating wounded and locals, he recorded the burial locations of hundreds of Confederate soldiers across the battlefield, and then ended up working with the families and state representatives to bring the bodies back to Southern cemeteries. You can see there he's notating a captain who's buried, looks like on near Carl Forney's house in Hanover. So really interesting.
From the Battle of Hanover.
Right, yeah. And the last couple items also from the aftermath, I think actually we'll end with this in here. Just a stunning medical kit that was left behind here at Gettysburg by a Confederate surgeon. The surgeon's name was Thomas Means. He was in the 11th Georgia. Ended up at the Division Field Hospital for Hood's Division, Confederates, following the second day's bloody fighting near Little Round Top. Of course, Hood was severely wounded. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of his men were wounded and treated at these field hospitals. This kit, Means ended up leaving behind here at Gettysburg. But the amazing thing is we have an account from the surgeon, and he wrote about not having enough bandages to treat the wounded. And so you can see how in the back of the kit, the doctors had cut into the cotton batting and were pulling it out and using it to treat the wounds. So you look at that, it's a kit, we know exactly where it was used, the house and the barn still stand. We have the story of the surgeon and the story of the family that lived there. That's what we're really excited about, is to form a more complete picture of what life was like here. It wasn't just about the soldiers, it wasn't just about the civilians. There's so much going on. It's a community affected by incredible events. And just before we leave, actually, I want to have Maria turn just for a second, and we'll talk about some of the more modern artifacts or post-Civil War artifacts in our collection. Of course, Gettysburg became an incredible destination for visitors almost immediately, and tourists and veterans. We have a lot of items from the veterans' reunions in 1913 and 1938. This is an original camera used by one of our more famous local photographers, William Tipton. He recorded thousands of views of the Gettysburg battlefield with this very camera. And we have Tipton's photographic collection in addition to the camera, and a lot of glass plate negatives as well. And then more recently even, we have some items that belong to the Eisenhowers. Of course, Dwight and Mamie Eisenhower purchased a farm here in 1950, were members of the community for the rest of their lives. This is a photograph of Mamie and one of her hats behind it. And Mamie wore a lot of these hats. We have 3 of them in our collection. We really think they're incredible. And also a pen that was used by Dwight and Mamie Eisenhower to register to vote here in Gettysburg. I see we have a question. What are the books about on the shelves? Tim, would you like to explain that one?
Well, if you look over here, this is normally our Civil War research room. So we have a table here, and when somebody comes to do research on the Battle of Gettysburg or a related Civil War topic, or soldiers from this area, we have a large library of Civil War regimental histories or books on the battle. So we have a large collection of stuff just about, people that were here during the battle, or units that were here during the battle. Right. So we're in the Civil War research room. Right,
yeah. And we have on the wall, I guess while we're here, we'll just show you, this is a rendering of the new facility that we're going to be building. And we'll be able to have a spacious reading room and library so that you can come in and see all of these items in our museum, but also research the topics that interest you most related to Gettysburg and Adams County. So we have hundreds of books here that you'll be able to access, and we'll have licensed battlefield guides like Tim, our historian, who can answer all of your questions, and it'll be a wonderful place for us to preserve all of these items before they're lost. Now, Tim alluded to this earlier, but obviously the Wharf House is not ideal for records in this building, and as you'll see as we walk throughout the different rooms, we have no fire protection system, there's no climate control, and a lot of our materials are actually packed up at storage crates at off-site locations. And so we have very little access to a large portion of our collection, including many, many more artifacts like these. So it'll be a wonderful opportunity for us to not only save all this history and make sure it's protected, but also to create something where you can come in and learn more about Gettysburg, not just the battle, but all of the story of Gettysburg that dates back to, the Native American times and goes all the way through to the Eisenhower era and the Eisenhower Farm and even beyond that. So, Tim, why don't you take us into the main research room here at the Wharf House, and we'll talk a little bit more about what kinds of research people can do at the Adams County Historical Society. I see Maria zooming in on a drum. This is a drum used by the local Democratic Party in 1856 when James Buchanan was elected. And then if you also pan up there, Maria, this is a mirror that hung in a house in Gettysburg during the battle. And if you zoom in at the very top of the mirror, you'll see it was struck by a bullet. And Maria will probably get herself in that view. Yes, so why don't we come down? We're going to come down now and we'll show you a little bit more about what we do, what kinds of research collections are here, research opportunities, and what people do when they visit the Adams County Historical Society when there's not a global pandemic going on.
Well, I think that a lot of people realize that we have a collection of material relating to the civilians that lived here at the time of the Civil War. And we are in Gettysburg, and a lot of people are interested in the Civil War. But there's two other kinds of research that people do here on a more regular basis. And at heart, the very basis of the Historical Society is genealogy. So there are lots of local people who, conduct genealogy, who like to research who their grandfather was or who their great-grandfather was, and maybe create a family tree. And we have a lot of people that come in to do that. We also have lots of people that from out of the area that have relatives that once lived in the area, early settlers that come and do research. And so we have a huge facility for genealogical research. And in our new building, this is probably the thing that is here that will remain very similar, just in a new space. But we have lots of church records. We have lots of marriage records. In baptismal records. We also, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, have a lot of county records. We also act as the county archives. So we have a massive amount of deed records. We get the deed books, and people come and look up their property. So that's the other kind of research that we really conduct a lot of, is land research. People come here or they write to us and they ask us about their house. They want to know when their house was built, who lived in their house. They want to know something about the land transfers. So we have records pertaining to the properties in Adams County. And we do a lot of research on, the town itself. And, we're the county archive, so we do the whole county. And so that's the major research. We got genealogy, land research that people come and do, and then also historical subjects, whether it be somebody researching Mary Jameson, the settler that was taken in 1758 and ended up in New York, or Civil War research. But there are the three main types of research that we conduct.
Right, and we should point out too, this deed book, this is the first deed book of Adams County that dates to 1800. You can see the beautiful calligraphy. These are the original deed books that were kept by the courthouse, and every single transaction, we could debate that. Yeah. Many of the transactions of people trading land and selling land back and forth are recorded in these books. So they're really incredible. We use them all the time. And Tim has actually compiled an incredible database of the histories of each of the houses in Gettysburg. So if you want to know who lived in a house during the battle, what the family's experiences were like, what happened to the family afterwards, and what the house looks like today compared to what it may have looked like during the battle. We have all of that research, and we love sharing it, and we will certainly be featuring a lot of that in our new building to give folks a sense of how the town of Gettysburg has changed over the years and what has stayed the same. So it is an incredible collection in this room, but a lot of our materials, as I said, are also stored at off-site locations. And so in our new building, we'll have a large reading room area where you can come in and pursue any topic related to Gettysburg or Adams County history. So that's our main research room, and I think maybe Tim forgot to mention the best thing in the room is the card file. Yeah. You don't see these anymore.
We have an index card file, and other historical societies have card files with index cards. Now, what's interesting is Dr. Charles Gladfelter, who was the director of the Adams County Historical Society starting in the late 50s up through the early 2000s, he had volunteers working on index cards. Before there were computers, there were, index card files in alphabetical order. So if you wanted to find something, you looked on the index card, you found the name, and then the card told you where to go to locate more about it. So he started volunteers, and there was one particular volunteer that just started recording death notices, marriage notices, estate sales, and such from the early 1800s Adams County newspapers and typed them onto these 3x5 cards. I think he used to tell people that we had like over 50,000 cards. Well, one day, a volunteer decided to count the cards. He actually made a block of wood and made it the size of 100 cards so that he could determine. And he counted them, and there's like 250,000 index cards.
Actually, we have a question from Ferris. He'd like to know, have your local records been digitized? Speaking of index cards.
We have digitized those index cards, and but they're the files that we digitize them in are kind of bulky, and we do not have these index cards on our website, but I'm sure we will at some point. That's one thing. If you visit the Adams County Historical Society website, achs-pa.org, or just search Adams County Historical Society Gettysburg and it'll come up. You'll see that we have been very aggressive in the last few years of digitizing stuff and making it available on our website, because we understand that people from all around the country want to use our facility. And I'm sure we're going to even do more of that in our new facility, digitizing collections.
So I guess he has a PS here. It says, I meant the actual records.
Oh, the actual records. So these index cards index death and marriage notices in the newspapers. And the newspapers are digitized on newspapers.com. So now, we used to have to look in the old newspapers. Now we go to the index card, find what the reference is in the newspaper, and then go over to the computer and look on newspapers.com and then get that issue and look at it. So other people have actually assisted us in our collection. So it used to be in the old days, you would find something on index card, and then you would have to go to this thing called microfilm. And you would have to, for 15 minutes, struggle to get the reel onto it and to get it rolled to the spot. And, it sounds like it was easy, but I'd like some kids to try it today.
I see there's just a follow-up on that. We have over 1 million items, probably closer to 2 or 3 million if we really actually counted everything. And we have maybe 60,000 records that are cataloged, and many of them are scanned, and those are original records and photographs. So, we have a very, very small portion of the collection scanned. Of course, it's extremely time-consuming and has to be done alongside some careful note-keeping to make sure everything's recorded properly. So that's something we have a lot of volunteers that help with, and in our new building, we would love to have other volunteers join us and help in the effort to get things digitized and more accessible online. Someone else asked about women's history and whether we have diaries and letters from women. We do. I know of a few collections. Of course, we looked at the Sally Myers diary a few minutes ago. We also have this book. I think Tim and I really love this book. This is the Women's Cookbook, prepared by the ladies of the Presbyterian Congregation of Gettysburg in 1876. So if you want to know what the families of Gettysburg were eating in the Civil War and post-Civil War period, you can get a sense of how terrible it sounds.
And in it, they say many of the recipes are from like their grandmothers.
Right.
So if we're talking about a book written in 1876 and they're giving you recipes from their grandmothers, these are recipes from the early settlement of this area, and fascinating recipes. Yeah. Just you should read some of the names, because they always are startling to me, the things that people thought were great.
They give instructions how to spice cherries, tomato mustard.
Tomato mustard.
Yes, tomato mustard. Oh, piccalilli. Look at that. Yellow pickles. I think some of the meat dishes are really kind of terrifying. I think there's an eel stew. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
But they do have broiled steak, roast beef, stewed kidney. Oh, there's a good one. So anyway, we could go on and on and on with this. This is 1876. Gives you an idea of what life was like in Gettysburg at that time. That's some really great German cooking, isn't it?
So somebody wanted to know, do you authenticate items if they were brought here to us?
No.
We can't officially, we're not an appraiser, so we can't officially authenticate items, but, we are always happy to look at items if you have something in particular. Although I think I would like Tim to tell one of my favorite stories about when people sometimes bring in a document to authenticate. And Tim's had this happen several times. I think everybody will enjoy this story. Several times somebody's walked in and brought a document for Tim to see, a document that they felt was really worth a lot of money.
It's happened to me 3 times, and each of the 3 times it's happened to me, the person was dead serious. They had an old parchment paper, and it was a letter by Abraham Lincoln, and it was written from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And the one time, it wasn't in person. The guy called me on the phone, and I said, well, could you just read a little bit of it? And of course, he started 77 years ago. And I think what people have a hard time realizing that aren't familiar with the Gettysburg Address is in the early days of our town, in the early days of tourism, they created facsimiles of the Gettysburg Address on old parchment paper and sold them around town. So people find these things, and the actual parchment document might be from like the 1930s or the 40s, sold in the Jenny Wade gift shop or something. And people get these, and they not only are they made to look old, they are really old because they've been around so long, and they find them, and they're not familiar with the Gettysburg Address, and they want us to authenticate it as an actual letter from Abraham Lincoln. And it's just tough to let these people down easy sometimes when they come in with stuff. Now, another story I always like to tell in this vein is everyone is always saying, oh, our family has deeds from William Penn. And of course, I always like to say, and we'll talk about deeds in a second, that William Penn died in 1718, and we didn't even have settlers here into the 1740s. No one from our area has a document signed by William Penn that he was dead. William Penn's wife, and then his sons, and then his grandson took over the proprietorship of Pennsylvania, and that's whose name is on the documents here, his sons or his grandson. Okay.
That's great. Good. Do we have a couple questions, Maria? Maybe we can answer them as we're walking upstairs.
Sure. Bob wanted to know, how large is your clothing collection?
Well, that's a good question. I think we have yet to discover how large our clothing collection is.
One thing about the clothing collection, and I have been here at the Historical Society as a paid staff member or a volunteer since 1989. And I do remember the room in which we held our clothing collection, our fabric collection. Clothing, flags, blankets. We have a large collection of quilts. And we even had a spinning wheel, an old spinning wheel from local Adams County. But that stuff got packed away when we were in the other building, and I would say it got packed away around 2000 because there was a problem maybe with bugs in the building, and I have not seen that stuff in like 20 years. Now, we have lists of what we have, and it's stored away, and that's one of the things we're talking about in the new museum. We got to go through that stuff. We got to figure out what we have, take a good look at it again. We can look on our inventories in our collection material and see what we have, but I haven't actually physically seen the items in a while.
We do have, as we walk, why don't we keep walking, and I'll just talk about a couple of things from the textile collection. We have a flag that flew off the Fahnestock House in Gettysburg on July 4th, 1863, as the Union Army was moving back into the town after the battle. And we also, Tim and I have not actually seen this, but we have on our inventory that in storage there is a shirt that was evidently hanging in a house in Gettysburg near the window. and a shell crashed outside and debris splattered all over the shirt. And so there's like burned embers and dust, and it's actually been preserved in that state. So when we find that, we will certainly share it with everybody. So now we're upstairs in the non-public part of the building. We have these rooms just jam-packed full of artifacts and records and photos. And like we said earlier, there is no fire protection or climate control, and that's what worries us so much. With so many incredible priceless materials, we don't want to see them lost, and that's why we're so fortunate to have your support in this capital campaign that we've launched to build a new home that'll be just north of Gettysburg, and we'll have a very nice sized facility that'll store all of these archival documents properly. So let's walk around just for a minute. Tim, would you like to first talk about these two items we have hanging on the wall?
Sure. Over here on the wall, we have the original Tavern Sign that hung in front of a tavern. It was established in 1809. We're not sure the date of this actual sign, but the tavern was established in 1809, and it was Henry Gitt's Tavern. And I think that if you look at the emblem in the center of the sign, the people who are familiar with Adams County will know right away where the tavern was. At the intersection of current Route 30 and 94, it is Cross Keys. You see that? So that's, about halfway between, well, it's a little, let's just say it's a little east of New Oxford. Also, one of my favorite items is, again, from Henry Stuart. Henry Stuart, the son of Sally Myers Stuart, who worked here at the Adams County Historical Society in the 1940s and 50s, and that is a bicycle that he actually built from a kit. So I think it's called the Bone Shaker is the official name of the brand, or it's a Columbia bicycle, but the type of bicycle. And you can imagine riding that on our old Adams County roads.
Yeah, so Tim, before you do this, I just want to set this up. Right now in our new museum, we're really excited laying out the different galleries. Right now we're working on the photographs and the artifacts and some text, and what we want to talk about, the stories we want to tell. And of course, we're going to start with dinosaurs, and we have dinosaur footprints in our collection from Adams County. We're going to talk about Native Americans. Then we're going to get into the early European settlers, what it was like on the Pennsylvania frontier here in Adams County. Of course, Adams County was a war zone during the Civil War, but it was also a war zone during the French and Indian War. So we had kidnappings of families, murders, we had raids where houses were burned. We're going to talk about people like Mary Jameson, who's a very famous captive. Tim mentioned her earlier. And then what we're currently writing is the section on land acquisition, the pens, and how you would actually go into a place like Adams County that had just been opened up to settlement by the Penn government, and you'd become a squatter, meaning that you didn't have legal title to your property, but you lived there and you were hoping to go through the process of acquiring land. So we're going to talk about that process. And I do want to point out before Tim shows us one really amazing artifact. That over the next few months, I think for the rest of the year, once a month, we're going to do a special program that relates to one section of the new museum. And we're going to go chronologically through time, starting with prehistoric items, and we're going to go through to the modern era. So we're very excited. We're going to start that, I think, later this month with dinosaurs and geology, and then we're going to go forward through time through over 300 years once a month. So we hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, Tim, why don't you show everybody what you're looking at here, what you've been working with on this table?
Well, I've been going through some of the early collection and looking for the earliest items that might be in our collection, and most of them are land documents for people who are trying to gain ownership to property. This is an early deed. So, somebody would be on a piece of property, they'd apply for a warrant, they would have a survey of the property done, and then eventually there would be a patent deed. And this one is issued by Thomas and William Penn. And this...
Richard.
I'm sorry. Thomas and Richard Penn, two of the sons of William Penn. And this is the original deed as opposed to something in the deed books. And of course, this is York County at that time. And it's on vellum or, usually sheepskin, some kind of animal hide. And, it's not printed. It's written out. And it says here across the bottom that this deed was signed on the 18th day of June in the year of our Lord, 1750. The 23rd year of the reign of King George II. So 1750. And I think this is what I just looked at it earlier. It's a William Wireman, if you're familiar with the area of York Springs, William Wireman. And it just says that where it's located, the land is situated along Bermudian Creek, west of the Susquehanna River. So and then of course it gives you the the details of the land survey. We also have documents that are surveys for the town in the area, and here's two of them I have out. This is a document of a survey of the boundaries of the land of the Reverend Alexander Dobbin, and of course, just south of the town. And this right here is a document that is the original survey for South Baltimore Street. We call them Alexander Dobbin's spring lots. And of course, on the document, Baltimore Street is referred to as the Tawnytown Road. Very, very, very long story. But actually, Andrew, I live right there.
Right.
Right there on lot number 7 in this thing. Okay. But we have lots of interesting early material that'll be in the museum we talked about.
And you can see some of the rooms here, but we're not going to go in every one. Maybe in future videos we'll take you inside some of these specific rooms and go through some different collections. But behind Tim we have a room that's full of media. It's everything from early pencil sketches and paintings from the 1700s all the way through our entire photographic collection, which includes early ambrotypes and daguerreotypes and cased images. And it has all of our photographic collections from the Civil War period, like the Tipton collection, glass plate negatives, beyond that, stereo views, and then more modern items like oral histories. We have tapes, reel-to-reel, DVD, VHS, of older residents primarily giving their memories.
35 millimeter slides.
Right, yeah. I don't know what that means, but... Anyway, behind me. So we have more items behind me. This is just an overflow room, basically, with some more books and really rare early manuscripts, letters, diaries. Really, you could go and open a box and find an incredible letter from the Civil War period or earlier, and you get a sense of how packed into this building we are. And that's really the challenge, is that there's just so much here, and it's not well lit, and the conditions are not great. And because it's Gettysburg and it's Adams County, we're so excited to have the opportunity to build something really remarkable that will properly house all these materials. Thanks again, by the way, to the many of you who donated on the video tonight. If you have a chance to do that, every little bit helps us, and it's really deeply appreciated.
Speaking of deeds, these boxes each contain about 100 original Adams County deeds. So not only do we have the deed books that are copies of deeds that were generated at the Adams County Courthouse, over the years, individuals have donated early deeds to us. And we have, I forget exactly how many we estimate, but we have maybe 3,000 deeds of properties in Adams County, and some of the deeds are pretty early. Oh, by the way, if anybody has any 1740s or 50s deeds they would like to donate to the society, this would probably be a good time.
Very good. All right, now we're going to take you across the hall into another room. As Tim mentioned earlier, we are the official, or I should say unofficial, county archives. So we have hundreds, actually tens of thousands of documents from Adams County that were official records generated by our courthouse. This whole room to my right, I don't think we're going to go in there tonight, but this whole room to my right actually has the original tax ledgers for every single town and township in the county. We have, actually, let's come in just for a second. We'll walk back here. It has all of the original court cases from the town of Gettysburg, some of them featuring Thaddeus Stevens and other prominent local attorneys. And we also have, as I mentioned, early tax records. These are early ones, back to 1800, sometimes 1799. And we have things like tavern licenses. You had to have a license to run a tavern, just like a liquor license today. And we have those licenses back to 1800. We have naturalization papers for immigrants. Then I put one of my favorite items here on the table. This is from the Adams County Almshouse, or the Adams County Insane Asylum. It's the log book for the insane hospital, listing all the patients when they were admitted, what the cause was for their admission, and it lists any notes about their time there. And we didn't actually pull a specific page, but you can see some of the causes: melancholia. We have, this one just says senile insanity. Let's see, anything else really good on this page? Not good, but interesting. Let me turn the page. I know a lot of folks are very interested in this. We've shown it a few times before. It's just really a fantastic insight into what our local Adams County Almshouse was like. It was a really horrible place. We have a video on YouTube that details the history of the almshouse complex that we did a few months ago. We hope you'll check that out if you're interested. I see a question: what will become of the house after we move? So it's owned by the seminary. We're not quite sure what they will do with it, but presumably it'll return to being a residence or a dormitory. And it was a dormitory for many years before we moved in. This was meant to be our temporary headquarters. We moved here in 2011 with the intention of building a new facility, and it's really now we're starting to get the wind under our sails to go ahead and build that new facility, and very excited to start building it this year. Yeah.
We have a question from Ralph McClellan. Do you have any artifacts related to the Black Horse Tavern or the McClellan House Tavern?
We do.
Sure.
I believe we have some tavern licenses from the tavern of Francis Bream's Black Horse Tavern.
Yeah, or the McClellans.
Yes, and the McClellans as
William McClellan had the tavern at the Black Horse Tavern, and then, of course, he sold in 1846 to Francis Bream, and two of his sons opened a tavern in Gettysburg, and of course that's what is now the Hotel Gettysburg, but the McClellan's Tavern in town was at that site. And they were, the McClellan family were tavern keepers for many, many years, and we don't have the tavern license at the time of the Civil War. Our collection basically starts from the early, I think they're up here, from the early 1800s up through the 1840s. So undoubtedly we would have some McClellan tavern licenses in there.
Wow, that's amazing. And they are incredible, these early tavern licenses. Lots of the area residents would sign them to attest that they were okay with the tavern. Alcohol was pretty controversial then, as it may still be in some circles now. We have some of these documents, like in Gettysburg, the early tavern licenses are in many cases signed by James Geddes, which is really fantastic. So why don't we go into another area of the building, show you a couple more things before we sign off. Now, over the years, that room is mostly items that came to us through the courthouse and the county. We've also received thousands of collections from area residents and area families, as well as businesses and civic organizations, and just about any other group or individual you could imagine. And we have so many of these collections. They're, again, kind of jam-packed into this room. And you'll notice, though, everything is in archival boxes, so they're protected within the box. It's just the larger conditions that we worry about, like fire or flood, and not having control of the humidity and the temperature, which can wear the documents down over time. So you'll see in this room, we have boxes after boxes after boxes, and they have labels, that relate to the topic or the family or the business or the church or the school. And we pulled a couple items out before we started here, and I want to point one out, and then Tim, I think, has one as well. This is a donation we just received last year. It came from a woman who lives in Gettysburg who was cleaning out her house and moving. In her attic, she found an incredible collection of early documents, images, and other items from a family in New Oxford, the Hymes family. And so we have some early pencil sketches of members of the Hymes family. This is a pencil sketch of George Hymes, who was born in 1775. Was a longtime resident of New Oxford. And then in that very same collection, just to kind of illustrate the depth of the history here in the county, we have some items that belong to the family given to them by the Eisenhowers. Turns out that one of the Hymes women ended up marrying a Dr. Johnson. And Dr. Johnson was Eisenhower's physician here in Gettysburg. And so the Johnsons became close with the Eisenhowers. And we have some presents that Mamie Eisenhower would give to her friends for Christmas. This is one of Mamie's presents. You can see it's a notepad with some special pens, with some paper, writing materials, and my favorite part, a card with Mamie's signature Sharpie writing This is her Christmas card to the Johnsons in 1974. You can see Mamie, you can always tell it's Mamie's handwriting, the First Lady, former First Lady of the United States in 1974. We have in this room alone many items that belonged to families given to them or in some way associated with the Eisenhowers, who were undoubtedly the most famous residents of Gettysburg during the 1950s and 60s. Tim, do you want to show us something down there?
Yeah, and I should mention we're in our collections room where we house collections, and you can see that the Historical Society over the years has made great strides. Most of the things in our collection, although they aren't individually cataloged, they have been accessioned, and they are in archival folders, in archival boxes, in a room on storage shelves. I should point out that a shout out to Randy Miller. Randy Miller and I actually assembled all these metal shelves and put all these boxes on these shelves when we moved into the Wharf House in 2011. Here's a collection of items, original items from Evergreen Cemetery. And this is a early permit book. There's a few copies of the permit book of Evergreen Cemetery. And this was where the superintendent of Evergreen Cemetery would record the burials, where people are buried, and they actually did almost like a little death certificate. They have the name of the person, the age of the person, sometimes the date of birth. They have where they lived, like Strabane Township in this case, and the disease that they died of, in this case dysentery, and where they lived. They actually have the place of birth, and sometimes this is the only record of that early on. And on this page, I just opened the page here. And this is Alan Frazier, son of Thomas Frazier, who was a resident of Gettysburg. And it says here that on November 20th, 1863, he was killed by the explosion of a shell. Wow. And a visitor that was here for Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address had found an artillery shell on the battlefield, was hitting the artillery shell against a rock, trying to get the fuse out of it to take it home as a souvenir. Alan Frazier ran up to him, told him that wasn't a good idea, and the shell exploded and ripped him in two, and he died shortly after, and of course is buried in our cemetery.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I think now we'll head out into the hall and just wrap things up for a moment. As you can see, there are just so many rooms full of incredible items here. Next time, I think we'll actually do another one of these tours at some point in the future and go through in even more detail, show you more of the records and artifacts as we're uncovering them in the process of creating our new museum. But as you can see, this building is just not enough for us, and we are so excited to get the many more items out of storage, out of the crates and out of our warehouse, and put those back and unite them with the collection and get things under one roof and have everything available for you to come and see and enjoy and learn from. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think we have a couple questions before we go. Maria, do you want to give them to us?
We have a gentleman that would like to know if we have anything from Eddie Plank.
Yeah, I think ever since I was a volunteer here in the late 1980s, I think every single day I've been here, I've looked and scoured our collection for an Eddie Plank baseball card. I cannot find one. It wouldn't have been great if somebody had given us a baseball card years ago. But we do have items pertaining to Eddie Plank. What's really interesting is that Eddie Plank's wife, after he died, actually came here to the Adams County Historical Society. I guess when it was at the courthouse, she spent a lot of time here. Maybe, I'm not sure if she ever made it to the home at the seminary, but she did genealogy. And we have all her genealogical charts from her family, the Myers, and from the Plank family. So we have a lot of material from her. And she did donate us some stuff about Eddie Plank in his career, but we don't have like an Eddie Plank baseball bat, or I know that his grandson or great grandson does own a bat that he hit his only home run of his career. We don't have any of the World Series rings or anything really cool like that, but we do have two items that I haven't even seen since they've been in storage. We have just an incredibly large team photograph of the Philadelphia Athletics. from like 1909 with Eddie Plank and Connie Mack in it. And we have a couple images of Eddie Plank while he was a player on the Gettysburg College team. So I think we do have some original photographs of Eddie Plank, but we don't have any documents from his career or items.
Right.
Time for one more. Can you answer in 30 seconds or less? Somebody wanted to know why did Adams County split from York County?
There were like 3 or 4 reasons. One of them is between 1790 and 1805 or something like that. There were like 12 counties formed in Pennsylvania. It was an era of county building. And the second issue was that the county seat of York County was York. And we're in the very western remote townships of York County. And the people who lived here felt that they were not being well represented by the county seat being all the way across in York. And the third reason is that the predominantly Scotch-Irish population here was always having a conflict with the predominantly dominant Germans in York, and they wanted to separate and form their own county. Although we have lots of Germans too in the southeastern part of our county. So yeah, they're the 3 major reasons.
That's wonderful. That was pretty good in 30 seconds. Thanks again, everybody. It was really nice spending some time with you, and we're going to continue to do these weekly programs. We did them last year. We're excited to start. This is our first one of the year. We hope you'll tune in again next Thursday. I think the program's on Culp's Hill with licensed battlefield guide Charlie Fennell, I believe. We'll have to post that in the next few days, so look out for that. And thanks again for supporting our work here to preserve Adams County and Gettysburg's history. And thank you for supporting our capital campaign as well. It's very nice of all of you who donated tonight to support us and to be part of our work as we move forward. And we're going to have a big announcement about the groundbreaking ceremony, we hope, in the next month or 2. So if you're in Gettysburg, if you're around in the area, we hope you'll potentially join us for that or for some other event around that time. And thanks again for choosing to spend your time with us and for supporting the Adams County Historical Society. Have a good night, everybody.